welcome to my channel. In Search of Wonder, my name is Anne, and today I'm going to review everything that I read in the month of October. It's very cliche, but it's hard to believe. It's already November 1st, and that October is done and gone. Very hard to believe. The good thing is my reading went well in October. Not only did I get 7 books read, which is much closer to my norm than I've been averaging of late this year, but also I read some really good books, and it was a joyful reading month for me. There was very little that I have to complain about in my reading in the month of October. So let's go through and talk about the books that I read and then how I did as far as reading what I actually planned to read and meeting my goals for the year and for the month. So let's start with the books I actually read. Pulling out my trusty journal because that's why I keep it, otherwise I would not remember a blessed thing. So the first book that I finished in October was Persuasion by Jane Austen, and I was reading the annotated version. Now, this was actually September's read that it took me a few days into October to finish it. So it mostly goes with September, but I finished it in October. So we're going to start with that one. Persuasion, I really enjoyed this so much. And while I have enjoyed reading everything by Austen this year, this one, I don't know, this was a highlight because it's one that I hadn't reread very recently. It had been a couple years, at least several years. And I don't know, each time I read this one, it just gets better. And I really loved it. In my notes in my journal, I said, happy sigh, so good. And I gave it 5 stars. I mean, what's not to love? Love me some Persuasion, love me some Jane Austen. The next book that I finished, I don't have on hand because it was a library book and I returned it to the library. This was not, I believe, on any of my goals for a year or for October or anything. It was just a sheer mood read. I saw it at the library. It looked interesting. I wanted to read it, so I read it. And that is Murder in Highbury by Vanessa Kelly. And it was a cozy murder mystery that was based on the characters in Highbury, where Emma lives. Emma by Jane Austen. And so you had Emma and Mr. Knightley, and at the start of the story, they are newly married and they're living at Emma's house. All of a sudden, I cannot think of the name of where she lived with her father. Totally escaping me, but anyway, so they're living there, and then someone in the village dies, who is a character. If you've read Emma, that you would know from that book. And so then Emma and Mr. Knightley get involved in solving the mystery of who killed this person, because Mr. Knightley is the magistrate, which is in canon with a book by Austen. And so I thought it was fun. I thought it was well done. I liked how the relationship with Emma and Mr. Knightley was portrayed. I liked how the story developed. Mr. Elton's character was a little thin. I didn't think it was very consistently drawn and not entirely believable in everything that he said and did and his perspective. So there's that. But overall, it was an enjoyable book. I gave it 3.5 stars. And if you like cozy mysteries, if you like Austen retellings, I think that it would be a good fit for you. And then I read The Mysteries of Udolpho, which was also a library book, so I don't have it to show you. And I really enjoyed that one a lot. More than I expected to, because I knew that it had a lot of very descriptive passages, which I remembered from another book I had read by Anne Radcliffe, The Romance of the Forest. But I purposed in my mind to enjoy them, and I did. They were truly beautiful. And it was a case of, in a sense, virtually stopping to smell the flowers, virtually enjoying the sense of wonder, taking a moment to observe the grandeur of the scenes that she was describing, even if it was only in my mind's eye and not in reality. It was still a wonderful experience and I really enjoyed it. And I do recommend it. The actual story and the plot, I mean, it was full of so many twists and turns. It was a fun ride. It was a gothic adventure and it was everything that a classic gothic novel is. And I thoroughly enjoyed it. I ended up giving it 4.5 stars. Our main character was not, Emily, she was not an amazing character. She was a little bit flat in some ways, a little bit bland, not flat, just kind of bland. Like the way that Radcliffe created her, she developed her character well. It's just her personality was kind of bland and a little vanilla. And very much the story happened to her rather than her actively doing anything in the story. However, that wasn't a huge drawback for me because there was so much happening in the story. It didn't bother me at all. It was enough to keep me reading. I was engrossed and I enjoyed it. So 4.5 stars. And then I read Night Falls on Predicament Avenue by Jamie Jo Wright, another library book. And that one was, one of my goals is to read Jamie Jo Wright to 0, which I don't think I'm ever going to do that until she stops writing, and she's probably going to be writing for a really long time. So I don't know when that's going to happen. I have not caught up on her backlist yet. This is one of her more recent books, but I also really enjoyed it. Night Falls on Predicament Avenue was actually, I think, one of Jamie Jo Wright's better stories. And you probably know this, but she writes Christian suspense stories. They always have a seemingly supernatural, sort of ghostly element, but in the end, everything is explained logically through natural means. And this one was no exception. I really enjoyed the relationship development. I enjoyed the character development. I enjoyed the themes of the story. I enjoyed how the plot played out. I really just liked this one a lot, and I gave it 5 stars. So another fun read in October. The Secret Diaries of Charlotte Bronte, I gave 4.5 stars to it. I have really enjoyed all the books I've read by Siri James to one extent or another. I haven't disliked any of them. There was one about like a young adult about Jane Austen when she was younger, like a teenager, that I didn't love as much. It definitely had a strong YA feel to it. I'm not a big fan of YA, but it wasn't a terrible book. It was YA, but it was well done for that. But this one, I really enjoyed, The Secret Diaries of Charlotte Bronte. And I gave it 4.5 stars. I have a minor complaint in that it's not really diaries. It's more of like a memoir sort of thing, the way that she wrote it. If she wanted it to be diaries, I think that she should have done it a little bit differently. She should have structured the narration a little bit differently, in my opinion. But overall, it was very well done. I love how she described the relationship between Charlotte and her sisters and the developing relationship between her and Arthur Nichols. That was actually one of the best that I've read about their story. So I thoroughly enjoyed this. It's fictionalized biography, which is one of my favorite genres. So another good read for October. And then I read Rainbow Valley by Lucy Maud Montgomery. And I realized that when I was editing my weekly Wanderings video for this past Sunday, I realized that I never actually updated with having finished it, because I did finish it last week. But as you are watching this, it was last week. But I forgot to film a clip with my final thoughts on it. So I'll give a little bit more in-depth review of this one than I am the others, because I've reviewed all the others elsewhere. But Rainbow Valley is the 6th or 7th book. 7th. It's the 7th book in the Anne of Green Gables series. It's the penultimate book. There's one more. The 1st and the 8th book in the series are my 2 favorites in the series. And those books I have read more than once, like 3 times each, I think. This one I had only read once before, along with the others middle books in the series, books 2 through 7. And I really enjoyed this reread. It's similar to Anne of Ingleside in that it is a lot about the family, about the children, and not so much about Anne and Gilbert. It's even less about Anne and Gilbert than it was in any of the other books. So you get the least Anne and Gilbert in this book. up to this point in this series. And then Rilla of Ingleside, the last one, really focuses on Rilla, their youngest daughter. And so you only get Anne and Gilbert as they're connected to Rilla as the story takes place. So that is a caveat for many people. Many people dislike that. They want more Anne, they want more Gilbert. They want it to be from Anne's perspective. So I get that, but that doesn't bother me at all. I enjoyed the perspective that Lucy Montgomery takes when Anne's children are born and the second generation is coming up. I enjoy seeing everything through their eyes. We also get the perspective of the kind of housekeeper sort of character in the Blythe household, which is Susan. Susan is hilarious. She shows up starting in Anne's House of Dreams, I believe, and I just love her character so much. And so she has some wonderful, funny moments in this story as well. Then also Lady Cornelia was introduced in Anne's House of Dreams. Lady Cornelia. What is her name? Cornelia, and then she's called Mrs. Marshall Elliott as well. But Miss Cornelia shows up in Anne's House of Dreams as well as Susan. Both of them show up at the same time. And I love her too. And they're just perfect foils for each other. They present different perspectives on everything that happens in the stories, which is just genius and also so much fun, the arguments that they get into. And then Anne is always in the middle of them, laughing at both of them very often. The two of them provide a lot of humorous moments, but also in this story, we're introduced to some more new characters, and we will meet them again in Rilla of Ingleside. These are the pastor's children of the Presbyterian church that the Blythe family attend. And they live in the manse, the pastor's house, and they become fast friends with the Blythe children. So we see the adventures that the Blythe and the Meredith children get up to, and the struggles that the Meredith children have and the Meredith family as a whole, because their mother has passed away. The father is lonely. He's very much stuck in his own head. He is grieving. He is at a loss. And furthermore, he's very much prone to daydreaming and being deep in thought and studying and ignoring the world around him, including his own children. And there are consequences for that. So we see that happen in this story, and it creates for some tender moments, it creates some sad moments, it creates some tense moments, there's some tension in the story, and it creates issues that need to be solved. So there's a lot of the story that is about that, and I just enjoyed that. I enjoyed the character of Mr. Meredith. I enjoyed the relationship that was developed with another character that we're introduced to, Mrs. Rosemary West, and it just was a beautifully told story, in my opinion. And also, there were multiple laugh out loud hilarious moments that just made me laugh uproariously. And I enjoyed that. I love a story that makes me laugh on occasion, and this one totally fit that bill. So I enjoyed it. Other people don't love it as much as being in the Anne of Green Gables series, but if you take it for what it is, I think it's a really very enjoyable book, and I'm really looking forward to reading Rilla of Ingleside in November. I forgot to add it to my official November TBR, but I'm definitely reading Rilla of Ingleside in November because now I just can't wait to read Rilla's story. She is a young girl in this book, but then in Rilla of Ingleside, she matures into adulthood, and it's just a wonderful story. So, Rainbow Valley, 5 stars, all the hearts. I love this one. And the last book that I actually read in October is Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. I read this the last week together with Faith at Faith and Books, and we both enjoyed it very much. It is a short little book because even this, you can see the spine is very small, but also there are 2, I don't know what you want to call them, prologues, introductions, or whatever to the story written by other people, including an essay by Vladimir Nabokov, who lectured about this book, and so it's written version of his lecture. And then at the back there's an afterword that is more analysis of the book. So this is like half analysis and half the actual book. So, but I read almost all of it, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. I love this story, and this is my level of sci-fi, by the way. So we have a mad scientist, Dr. Jekyll, but we don't really, get into the sciencey part of things that happen. So I like that. There's kind of a fantastical, atmospheric, mysterious element to it, and it's very vague, and we don't get into the details. So, that's pretty much right up my alley. There's not a lot of scientific discussion going on. And also the story itself is very compelling, and it's much more about human relationships and the reality of human nature than it is about science or crazy weird things, and you know, new creatures or beings or whatever, that kind of stuff. Like, and it's set in, you know, the real world. It's set in Victorian London, and it's much more plausible than your average science fiction, where you have to get used to a whole new world and new beings and a whole, you know, system set up that's different from our world. Anyway, this is much more up my alley, and I definitely enjoyed it, and I gave this one 5 stars too. So 5 stars all around in October. I'm telling you, it was a good month for reading. How does that stack up against my actual TBR for October? I haven't even looked at this. Let's see. So for the Classics Challenge, which was to read sci-fi or time travel, my goal was to read Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. Did that. So for Read My Shelf, I was supposed to read the Read Your Shelf Challenge by Chantal Reads All Day. History was the prompt, and The Secret Diaries of Charlotte Bronte went for that one. And then for the Jane Austen 250th anniversary celebration, The Mysteries of Udolpho, I read that one. And then for the Christian Fiction Reading Challenge by Jane Reads, who is Jeanette, the prompt was to read a Christie Award finalist from this year, and that was Night Falls on Predicament Avenue, which I read. And then I just said I wanted to read books for Victober. And that's where I definitely failed. I definitely failed in the Victober area of things. So let's talk about that. Let's talk about my goals and my overarching goals and my more specific goals for October. So here is my little Victo Bingo spread for Victober. And yeah, the only book I actually finished so far for this was Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, which is a Victorian sci-fi book. And so I'm glad I did, because then I was able to fill something in on here. I was able to put that in a few different spots. One for the spot of friendship, because actually the story opens up, there's multiple layers of friendship. The primary one is between 3 people. Mr. Utterson, who is kind of narrating the story, he's the narrator, and then Dr. Jekyll is one of his friends. And then there's another doctor, Dr. Lanyon, who is a third friend who gets involved in the story as well. So those 3 are friends. And then there is another friendship, a relationship, I guess, between Mr. Utterson and his cousin, Mr. Enfield. So there is some friendship in that story. So I was able to put it in that spot. And also a change in class status was another prompt. Now this was, you know, I mean, a little iffy, but there definitely was a change in status between Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. For class status, you could say, because Dr. Jekyll lived in a decently nice house, had servants. It wasn't in like a super fashionable neighborhood, but he was more or less well-to-do. And then Mr. Hyde was kind of like not so much. He had his own separate entrance to that house, which was the laboratory entrance, and he had his own apartment in a poorer district in London. So there's that change in class status there. That's why I thought it would fit in that spot. And then I also put it in this spot for fantasy, because there are some fantastical elements. It's not a straight up fantasy, but there are some fantastical gothic kind of elements to this story. So I put it in there, which might be a bit of a cheat, but I think it works. Now I will say I have also added a couple other things to this bingo board today. Today's November 1st, so I won't talk about it a lot, but I did read Enoch Arden, a poem by Alfred Lord Tennyson, which was one of my goals for October. And I only just now got to it today, November 1st. But anyways, I read a poem by Enoch Arden. I read a poem, Enoch Arden, by Alfred Lord Tennyson, and I really enjoyed it. And I was able to put that in a couple spots as well. I put it in the spot for not a novel, because it was a long form poem. And then I put it in the empire spotting prompt, because Enoch Arden is a sailor and he goes on a ship to China as part of, England's trade with China. And then he gets shipwrecked and he's, well, anyways, I don't want to tell you everything because I don't want to spoil the story, but there's definitely empire things happening there in that story. So I enjoyed that very much. And I'm just going to fill in the rest of this bingo board. It's just clearly not all happening in October. I'm just going to keep reading Victorian stuff until I get that filled. So the other thing is Chantal's Autumn Bingo, which I've almost completely filled. I just have one spot left, and there's a book I'm working on that will go in that spot. But as for what I read in October that fits on here, the short story or book under 200 pages, Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, goes for that one. For the warm beverage, I have The Secret Diaries of Charlotte Bronte by Siri James, because, you know, being English, they drink a lot of tea. And so they definitely did that in the story. Murder in Highbury, I put in the cozy prompt because it is a cozy mystery. And Persuasion, I put in the fire or rain spot because there are a couple scenes, one in particular that I'm thinking of in Persuasion, where rain is a big part of the story. Like, it's raining and that affects the plot, that affects the situation, that affects the scene, it helps to set the scene, etc. There's also mentions of, you know, being by the fireplace scenes as well. So, you know, you could put that in there as well. So I only have one more left in that. So as far as that goes, as far as readathons, etc., you know, Victober, not so much, but the Autumn Book Bingo, definitely succeeding in that one. As for larger goals, so my goal overall for 2025 is to read 100 books. I'm not really getting there, but I have read 76, 77, something like that. And so I'm getting really close. I don't know if I can fill this out in November and December. It's okay if I don't. It's just a number to reach for, and I'm getting pretty close, so I'm okay with that. But these orangish books are the ones that I read in October. I did not read any nonfiction in October, which is a bit of a bummer. However, on my reread list, I was finally able to cross off another one, which is Rainbow Valley. It's part of my quest to reread the entire Anne series. I just have Real Love Ingleside left in that one. And I started Shirley, which is another one of my rereads that I wanted to do this year. So I will be able to mark that one off as well. I don't know about any of the others. And for my 50 by 50, I actually made some progress here on this as well, because Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde was on that list, and I read it. And that means, oh yeah, I knew there was another one. The Mysteries of Udolpho was also on this list, and I read that in October. So I read 2 of these in October, and I actually didn't necessarily even plan it. It's just those books fit things that I was doing, and I knew that I wanted to read them eventually. I forgot that they were on this list, but that worked out nicely, because so far I've read 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So that is 1/5, 20% of the books I need to read by the time I turn 50, and I have 4.5 years to go. So doing pretty good with that. And then my goal this year is that half of the books I read be from my shelf, and I'm really doing great with that. This is their spot here for 50 books, and so 44 of them so far have been from my shelf, and I've read 77, 78, so that's significantly more than half of them. That's good. We won't talk about how many books I've added to my shelf. That's not important. We are not going to discuss that fact. Okay, for my Reading the Classics challenge, Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde went for that one. As for the scavenger hunt, where, you know, you're supposed to find different things in the book, the options were a sailing vessel, a time machine, and a mad scientist. Of those 3, the only one that fits was a mad scientist, but at least I got one. That's something. For Chantel's Read Your Shelf challenge, for history, I read The Secret Diaries of Charlotte Bronte. And for 5-star reads, look at this. I added 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 5-star reads. Out of 7 books, guys, that's amazing. I didn't give any book less than 3.5 stars. And even that one, like, it was fine for what it was. Like, it was good reading. Persuasion, Night Falls on Predicament Avenue, Rainbow Valley, Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. Well, okay, Enoch Arden is technically November. But anyways, yes. Good reading, good reading. And then for Jane Reed's Christian fiction, I had Night Falls on Predicament Avenue. And for celebrating Jane Austen, I am all caught up with that one. I'm going to read Northanger Abbey in November, and then possibly Lady Susan in December. I haven't quite decided which one I'm going to read in December for that one. But anyways, I am getting that one done. I did not, however, add anything to my world travels here, because even though my books kind of went in some interesting places, I had already marked them off from other books. So nothing new to report there. For October, I put my favorite read as Rainbow Valley, although it was hard because Persuasion was right up there, but I figured I should put something on there besides Austen because there's a lot of Austen dominating that scoreboard. So that is what I read in October and the goals that I managed to accomplish. Thank you for watching. Let me know how your October reading went. Was it, pretty good, or was it a bust? Did you enjoy your reading? Did you have a lot of 5 stars? Let me know. I want to hear your thoughts in the comments, and I will see you next time.